Marina Ellis, a determined 30-year-old single mother, faces a powerful real estate company, Crestview Holdings, in court after they try to seize her home using a fraudulent lease clause. Representing herself, Marina uncovers a web of deceit involving forged documents and illegal evictions. With the help of a whistleblower from Crestview's own team, she presents damning evidence that exposes the company's corrupt practices. Against all odds, Marina wins the case, not only saving her home, but sparking a fight for justice for others caught in Crestview's trap. The rain tapped steadily on the courthouse windows as a hush settled over Courtroom 4C. Amelia Rowan sat quietly at the defense table, a 30-year-old woman in a worn black blazer and faded loafers. Her long, dark hair was tucked behind her ears, and her fingers trembled slightly as she clutched a yellow legal pad with handwritten notes. She didn't belong here, at least not according to the people in the room. Across from her sat Lenox Capital, one of the city's most powerful corporate entities, represented by a 5-member legal team led by the sharp-jawed and silver-haired Baron Crane. His reputation in the courtroom was legendary, ruthless, meticulous, and undefeated when defending his high-profile clients. Amelia was alone. No lawyer, no advisor, no allies. Judge Miriam Harrell looked down from the bench, adjusting her glasses as she examined the case file. "Miss Rowan, you are choosing to represent yourself?" "Yes, Your Honor," Amelia said, voice steady despite the storm inside her chest. Crane rose smoothly. "Your Honor, the plaintiff asserts that Miss Rowan knowingly breached a confidentiality clause in her late father's lease agreement, resulting in unauthorized use of the commercial property and damages totaling $47,500. He clicked his remote. A slideshow began. Photos of the old bookstore Amelia had inherited from her father, legal excerpts, highlighted payment irregularities, and a sharp red arrow pointing at Amelia's signature. She knew what she was signing, Crane said, pacing confidently. And when she decided to house displaced tenants in the upstairs units rent-free, against explicit lease rules, she violated not only contract law but basic property ethics. The courtroom murmured. A few reporters scribbled notes. Amelia stood. "I didn't breach anything. That clause, the one about prohibited humanitarian occupancy, it wasn't the lease when I signed it. I have the original." Judge Harrell leaned forward. "You have a different version of the lease?" "Yes," Amelia said, pulling a folded document from her binder. "My father kept a paper copy. It has no such clause. And he was dying when he signed the agreement with Lenox. They rushed him. There are 2 signatures, one from the day he read it and another from a week later. Someone changed it in between." Crane barely blinked. "With all due respect, a crumpled lease and a sob story don't overturn binding legal documents." She admitted in a city interview that she allowed people to live in that building without informing the landlord. "I told the building manager," Amelia said quickly, "and I have text to prove it. I was trying to keep 3 elderly women from freezing on the street. But you broke the lease." Regardless of intentions, Crane fired back. "And what she's accusing us of, falsifying a legal agreement, is a serious charge." Amelia nodded. "That's why I'm not backing down." Crane's lips curled. "Well then, let's proceed." The judge recessed for lunch. Outside in the hallway, Amelia leaned against a column, staring at her phone. No new messages. No support. She closed her eyes. A voice broke her silence. "You don't know me," the man whispered, his face half hidden under a hood. "But I worked IT for Lenox. If what you're saying is true, there's a file. A PDF modification log. Only 1 copy exists, and they buried it." Amelia turned. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because they did the same thing to my brother. Took his building. Drove him into bankruptcy. I couldn't stop it then. But maybe I can now." He slipped her a crumpled sticky note with single phrase, "Storage Drive B43, Metro Vault Facility, Locker 118. Then he disappeared down the hallway. Back inside, the trial resumed. Crane presented a signed affidavit from a notary who supposedly witnessed Amelia's father consenting to the altered clause. Amelia felt her breath catch. Her father had been barely lucid that week. As the day ended, Judge Harrell looked toward Amelia. We will continue tomorrow. Defendant, be prepared to provide further evidence of your claim. Amelia packed her bag with shaking hands. As she exited the courthouse, the clouds overhead parted slightly. But the battle had only just begun. Night had fallen over Brook Hollow like a velvet curtain. The streets were damp from an earlier rain, and the diner's back alley glistened under the flickering security light. Marina Ellis sat inside her aging sedan, engine off, phone clutched in one hand, heart hammering beneath her coat. She kept glancing in the rear-view mirror. The voice on the phone earlier had been clear but cautious. Behind Garvey's diner, near the loading dock, midnight. It was 2 minutes past. Then movement. A shadow emerged from behind the dumpster. Small frame, hunched shoulders, steps tentative. Marina rolled down her window slightly. "Marina?" the woman asked softly. "Yes," Marina replied, unlocking her door. The woman stepped closer and pulled back her hood. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and sunken. She looked barely out of her 20s. Her ID tag was still clipped to her jacket pocket. Faded but readable. Elise Navarro, Crestview Compliance Intern. "I used to work there," Elise whispered, "in document control." Marina stepped out, her breath visible in the cool air. "Why did you call me?" Elise's voice cracked. "Because I saw what they did. To you. To dozens of others. To my grandmother." She handed over a flash drive, emails, lease modification logs, internal memos with timestamps. One folder is labeled DNR, do not release. Those are the instructions we got whenever we flagged irregularities. Marina blinked. "Why are you risking this?" Elise looked away. "Because I didn't speak up in time for my grandma. She lost everything. And now, I think they're watching me." A sound in the distance, a car door slamming. Elise's body jerked. "I have to go," she said. "Destroy this after court. Please. Good luck." And just like that, she disappeared down the alley. Marina stayed frozen for a moment, gripping the flash drive like it was made of glass. Her fingers trembled, not with fear, but with purpose. The next morning, Marina stood at the courthouse steps. A reporter thrust a mic in her face. "Are you prepared to represent yourself again today?" "I have new evidence," she replied calmly, "and I think it'll speak for itself." Inside, Franklin and Mays were already in position. Julian Marquette didn't even look at her when she entered. The courtroom buzzed with curiosity as Judge Ruth Delacroix entered. "Proceed," the judge said. Marina approached the bench and held out the flash drive. "This contains internal documents, Your Honor, provided by a former compliance intern at Crestview Holdings. It proves the lease documents were altered post-signature with intent to exploit." Julian shot to his feet. "Your Honor, we object. That drive was obtained illegally. It's stolen corporate property." Delacroix narrowed her eyes. "Does it contain potentially exculpatory evidence, Ms. Ellis?" "Yes, Your Honor. It shows intent to defraud." The judge turned to the clerk. "We'll pause for forensic review, but the court will accept it provisionally." Julian's jaw twitched. When the drive's content were projected, the silence was palpable. There they were. Email threads between Crestview executives. File version history logs showing metadata changes after signatures. A memo dated 6 weeks before Marina signed her lease. Proceed with 14C adjustment post-signature batch. Select targets from Phase 2 grid. Avoid drawing attention. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Julian scrambled. "This is out of context. That memo doesn't even mention Ms. Ellis." Marina stood. "Your Honor, I also have an affidavit from a notary confirming that my original lease, the one I signed, did not contain Clause 14C. They notarized it before any changes could be made." Judge Delacroix folded her hands. "Mr. Marquette, would your client care to comment?" Julian swallowed hard. "Your Honor, I request a recess." "Granted. 1 hour." Outside the courtroom, Marina sat alone on the wooden bench, eyes fixed on her daughter's drawing tucked in her folder. 2 stick figures in front of a tiny house with a big red heart above it. Suddenly, a woman, in her 60s approached. Elegant, quiet. She looked vaguely familiar. "You don't know me," the woman said softly, "but I'm a retired judge. I've been watching your case. And I have to say, what you're doing takes courage most lawyers don't have." Marina stood slowly. "I just want to keep a roof over my child's head." The woman smiled. "Justice doesn't always wear a robe. Sometimes it wears worn shoes and carries her own briefcase." As the hour passed, people started pouring back into the courtroom, more than before. Law students, tenants, journalists. Something was happening. Julian returned looking pale. He'd spent the recess arguing with two Crestview executives on a hallway call, his voice rising and falling in staccato fury. When court resumed, he had a proposal. "We are willing to offer a full dismissal of the case," he said. "No damages, no claims." The courtroom held its breath. Marina rose. "And I want a public statement from Crestview acknowledging their misconduct. Not for me, but for everyone else they've targeted." Julian looked like he wanted to object, but the judge beat him to it. "I'll allow it," Judge Delacroix said firmly. "You'll draft a joint statement under court supervision." And just like that, the trial took a turn no one expected. A simple woman, armed with truth and a flash drive, had forced a titan to retreat. But this wasn't the end. Outside, as Marina prepared to leave, a man in a gray suit approached her, different from the lawyers. Quiet, watchful. "Ms. Ellis," he said, handing her a card. "I'm with the State Attorney General's office. We're launching a formal investigation into Crestview's practices. I think your testimony could be crucial." Marina looked at the card, then up at the skyline. The fight wasn't over. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel small. She felt ready. The final day of the trial dawned cold and gray, as if the sky itself were holding its breath. Marina Ellis stood on the courthouse steps, her daughter's worn scarf wrapped tightly around her neck. She looked up at the looming columns above her and took one long, steadying breath. Inside, Courtroom B7 was full to bursting. Reporters lined the walls. Law students scribbled in notebooks. Neighbors from Marina's building whispered and shifted in the gallery, hoping that this soft-spoken woman might do what none of them had dared: stand up to Crestview Holdings and win. Julian Marquette entered like a man walking onto a stage he owned. His tailored suit, his shark-like grin, it was all performance. He carried a folder with a red ribbon around it and dropped it onto the plaintiff's table with dramatic flair. Then he leaned toward Marina and whispered, "You still have time to sign. Walk out of here with your dignity. We'll waive the fees." Marina looked up from her notes, her voice calm. "You should worry about your own dignity." The gallery stirred. Judge Delacroix entered and called the court to order. "Ms. Ellis, are you ready to proceed?" "I am, Your Honor." "I'd like to call Elise Ramsey to the stand." Julian's team jumped up. "Objection. Your Honor, this witness was not formally disclosed." "Mr. Marquette," Delacroix said sharply, "we've already ruled on her admissibility. Sit down." Elise took the stand, her hands visibly shaking, but her voice was clear. "I work for Crestview's compliance department. We were ordered to revise tenant agreements, post-signature, to remove protections, to backdate clauses. We were told to use vague formatting so people wouldn't notice." She produced the original emails. Memos marked DNR, do not release. She showed file edit logs, spreadsheets listing high-risk tenants, and flag rows with red boxes labeled acquire asset, high return. Then she pulled out one more piece of paper. "This," she said, holding back tears, "is my grandmother's foreclosure notice. It's the same template, same clause, same tactics." Marina sat motionless. Julian's smirk was gone. Franklin and May scrambled to discredit Elise. They pointed out she had been fired, hinted at a criminal investigation, even questioned her motives. But Elise didn't break. "Yes, I was let go. After I questioned our ethics. After I refused to delete one too many audit logs." The room was silent. Julian rose for his final statement. "This is a sad tale. But let's not forget, Ms. Ellis signed a legally binding document. We cannot set a precedent that a motion overrides contract law." He turned to Marina, voice sharp. You're not a hero. You're a woman who missed payments and got caught. Then it was Marina's turn. She stood at the center of the courtroom, small and alone, but steady as a mountain. I never wanted to be here. I work 3 jobs. I go to school. I take care of my daughter. I paid what I owed. But Crestview changed the rules. Quietly, illegally. And when I asked questions, they threatened me with homelessness. She paused, breathing through the lump in her throat. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who refused to be quiet. She stepped back. Judge Delacroix recessed for deliberation. Minutes ticked by, then an hour. The crowd buzzed with whispers. Finally, the judge returned, expression unreadable. After review of submitted evidence, witness testimony, and supporting documentation, this court finds in favor of the defendant, Marina Ellis. A collective gasp echoed through the room. Furthermore, the judge continued. Crestview Holdings is ordered to halt all pending evictions under similar lease terms, pending a full investigation by state authorities. Julian's mouth opened, but no words came out. Marina closed her eyes. Her knees nearly gave way. Then, from the back of the room, Lila ran forward. Mommy, she squealed. Marina caught her daughter in her arms. Elise stood nearby, tears streaming down her face. The reporters surged forward. Cameras flashed. But Marina ignored them all. She held Lila close and whispered, We're going home, baby. Outside the courtroom, strangers clapped as she passed. Some offered hugs. Others simply nodded with respect. The simple woman who stood alone had not only protected her home, she had started something bigger. And somewhere across the city, in another dim apartment where a tenant stared at a notice pinned to the door, hope returned. Have you ever been underestimated? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if you found this story inspiring, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful tales of courage and triumph. Where are you watching from today?